and welcome to the Healthy Happy Hour. We are delighted to be here today to share with you some important information and to introduce you to our very special guest that you are going to absolutely love. To our guest today, she is the author of this fantastic book that I received just recently. It is just a beautiful book. It's so well laid out. It's called The Mindful Vegan. Her name, and the subtitle is A 30-Day Plan for Finding Health, Balance, Peace, and Happiness. And we're going to talk about all that today. The author's name is Lani Muelrath, and she has, been on all sorts of media. She's been in CBS, ABC TV, Health Magazine, Prevention, USA Today. She's quite a celebrity in the health movement. Huffington Post, Saturday Evening Post. She's certified in plant-based nutrition and mindfulness meditation, as well as she's a mind-body specialist and a credentialed yoga teacher. So you can see why Karen and I were so excited to have her on our show. She's actually been vegetarian and vegan for 45 years. So this is definitely one of the longest. She certainly doesn't look very old, so she must have started when she was an infant. I'm curious to learn more about that. And she's been practicing mindfulness meditation for over 25 years. And so I'm ready just to be zenned out by her calm, nurturing presence. And with that, Lani, how are you
Lani.
today?
We have to say Lani. Lani rhymes with Annie.
That's right.
Yeah, well, Lani. I'll tell you what. Hi, Gina. Hi, Karen. I answer to all variations, as you can imagine, as I've gone through life. But yeah, it is Lani, but I'll answer to all variations. I'm just so very excited to be here. I love the energy of your program and was delighted to just recently come to your acquaintance. So thank you for reaching out to me and inviting me on for today's program.
Oh, great. Well, we're thrilled to have you. And we did promise that we're going to be giving away a copy of this book. Thank you so much to you, Lani, for that. And so to be eligible to win a copy of the book, please share our video. Just click the share button right there in Facebook, and that will make you eligible to win. So please do that and let your friends know about this show that you're watching. And we will be giving away a copy of the book right after we close out. I see that Patricia has already shared. Dr. Patricia McGuire, great. Thank you so much. Glad you're here.
Fantastic. Lani, tell us a little bit about your story. I'm so fascinated that you have been following a plant-based diet for so very long.
As Gina said in the introduction, I started down this pathway about 45 years ago when I was actually teaching yoga as a college student. And as those who practice yoga know that part of the package or philosophy of yoga is ahimsa, which is nonviolence, reaching out of compassion and morality to all living beings. So vegetarianism was a natural come along with that. And as the years progressed, I then embraced veganism as it became more and more clear that my connection with inner happiness and peace and compassion was best exemplified with that lifestyle. But much of my journey is also tied up with a decades-long quest to get some degree of management over my weight, my food, my eating, heal the relationship with food, eating, and my body. And I know that I share that with a lot of people who just struggle with that. And it finally came to a point where even though I was eating healthfully, I certainly knew how to exercise. I have an advanced degree in kinesiology and all of this. It wasn't until I took up the mindfulness practice that I was able to bring these things together so that I restored this wonderful relationship with food, eating, and my body. Ended up dropping 40 pounds 20 years ago instead of decades of up and down with my weight. So it opened up a new freedom, and the mindfulness practice is what made the difference. So that's a nutshell version of my journey.
Oh boy, well, I can certainly relate. I had a weight problem, well, pretty much all of my adult life until I discovered and went vegan 3 years ago. And so that has been the key to me and frankly, why I am so excited about sharing this with the world, knowing that now I no longer have a weight problem. I no longer have that burden, that albatross that was just constantly hanging around my neck, and fear about eating something, and guilt about eating something, and the shame, and all of that was there. And then also along the way, discovering the tremendous health benefits. So I'm your poster child of, one of the people that you need to reach, that we need to reach with this message.
Yeah, well, this is very exciting to hear, and I'm very happy for you that you've made these connections, that your life's moved forward in this spectacular way. What's really important for those who are struggling out there, who may have a history as I do, or as Gina does, or if your disquieting state is even in another dimension, if it isn't with the food and eating, the mindfulness practices are what are able to reconnect you with your natural state of compassion, equanimity, peace, equipoise. I really like to make sure people understand that the peace and happiness that we are seeking to actually embody is there within us. It's actually parts in our brain. It's a brain state. And this is, since we talked about in the introduction here, in the part you had written about how we can achieve this health and happiness, it's actually, rather than something outside of ourselves, it's something that is inside. And the problem that we have is that our natural capacity and all these endogenous qualities have been heaped over with our busyness, our busy lives, and our busy minds. So this might be a really good time, since we just have a little bit of time together, to explain why mindfulness practices, how they work, and how it happens to restore equanimity to you. Shall we do that?
Oh, that would be fantastic.
Would that be a good place? Okay, and as you know, in the Mindful Vegan, I really go into everything in depth. But there's a mini lesson that I can give right now, and I can even give a takeaway that people can take forward with them into this busy time of year to help restore this mindfulness. So let's find out why that is important in the first place. We all hear, oh, it's good to be more mindful, it's good to be more present, but what does that really mean? Why does that help you connect with your natural well-being? So first, let me just give my brief definition of what mindfulness is. Does that sound good?
Sounds great.
Okay. So mindfulness is a specific form of mental training, and it's a particular kind of attention that you bring to your daily activities. Now, together, these two lead to reductions in reactivity and to the restoration and cultivation of positive brain states. Sounds like we have an emergency going on there. You two okay? I heard a siren in the background.
I actually don't think it was New York for once.
I think okay. It was me in Orlando.
Okay, so just to this is a good setup for the mini lesson that I'm going to give. If we're looking for these practices that lead to reductions in reactivity, how much of our day is spent in reaction to a person, to a person, to a place, to a thing, to a circumstance? And we're used to just having this reactivity, and we've never gotten any kind of training with creating a little space around that stimulus and response. Like Viktor Frankl says, that between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space, there is a choice. And in that choice lies your freedom. So with the mindfulness practice, what we're doing is cultivating, growing that space between stimulus and reactivity.
So Lani, sorry, can I just step in and say, so I meditate every day. I practice mindfulness, and I will have a conversation with people quite often where they'll say, I'm not doing it right. And I tell them there is no such thing as not doing it right. But you were talking about this being our natural state, and I've also, read so much about the practice of letting go and doing less and that it's not about making it happen and doing. But it seems so counter. Do you find that people have that reaction, the idea that letting go and creating space is not like productive enough, that how could it be working?
Yeah, especially in our culture, because we are enculturated, Karen, to do something. God can make a fix by doing something new. So this is why I wanted to bring it back to the fact that these states are within us. So this is the perfect lead into what you're talking about with the doing and the being. When we practice mindfulness, and as you say, people go, oh, I can't meditate. I just sit down and my mind just starts going all over the place, right? Well, actually, that's how we are all the time. We just don't notice it until we sit down and try to not be engaged with every thought that comes down the pipe. This is what mindfulness training is about, as you know from your experience. When you do the formal practice, remember I said there's two parts of mindfulness training, a specific form of mental training and the awareness you bring to your daily activities. So when you're doing your special form of mental training, what you are doing is choosing to set aside some time to practice what it's like not to run with every idea that comes into your head, not to be hijacked by every thought that comes. This is how you start to reduce reactivity. We are really unaware of how much we just run with things. Like I said, we haven't been even taught that we're doing that, but the research tells us that, and there's a good section in the Mindful Vegan called Wandering Mind, Unhappy Mind. And what we find out is half the time we are in a wandering mind state. That means at least 50% of the time, all of us or most of us are spending the time reflecting on something in the past, what coulda, woulda, shoulda, rehashing, replaying something that happened yesterday, or we're projecting ahead to the future in a what-ifing, catastrophizing kind of way. Now, what could be the problem of that? Here's what happens. If you allow these things to run unchecked and not even aware that they're going on, spending all this time it's called the default mode network, by the way, our brains residing in this wandering mind, what happens, it starts to hook neural activity in your brain that leads to excessive rumination. I can't say it any better than that. Excessive means too much. Rumination is like, you know how you can't get something out of your head?
It's like it leads to worry.
Oh, yeah. Well, here's what happens. When you move into excessive rumination, this moves you into parts of your brain. That was a perfect setup, Karen. Parts of your brain where reside anxiety, cravings, addictions, sadness, depression, obsession. So by simply letting our mind run unchecked without even being aware that it's run off, this starts to be a dampener on our system. Now, remember our mental system, we started out by talking about these qualities are peace, compassion, happiness, and joy are endogenous to us. The minute you switch out of the default mode network or wandering mind into the present moment, it's like switching a train track. Instead of being lost in these places that can lead you into anxiety, you have made the choice to simply be here and now. And this is why we use the breath. In the Mindful Vegan, I start by training with the sensations of the breath, because the breath takes place right now. You can't breathe for yesterday and you can't breathe for tomorrow. So by simply bringing your attention to the breath over and over again, as you're sitting for practice, you are developing the skill of getting some degree of mastery over your habits of thinking. And as soon as you pull out of the wandering mind into the present, you have unloaded yourself of all of those tendencies to pull you into confused mind, anxiety, depression, that long list we just went through. So that's a really simple explanation for why it is worth our while to do this kind of mental training, so that we're not just lost without any mastery over what's happening when.
That's really the best description I've ever heard of benefit, that like an immediate benefit in terms of the neural pathways.
Yeah.
And that it diminishes the potential for rumination, wandering mind, and leading to worry and anxiety and cravings. I mean, that's really so incredibly powerful. And oh my goodness, Gina.
Yeah, these are really good tools. So, tying this back to what you were talking about earlier with the stimulus response and widening that gap and making a more conscious decision. So in the old days, I used to crave Starbucks donuts. Fess up time here. I don't know. I was obsessed with them. And even though I live, quick walking distance to 3 Starbucks donuts, I was usually able to keep my craving down to even once a month, which was kind of surprising. But I thought about it a lot, and it really consumed a lot of my brain. And my habit, my exercise is to get out and walk. And so I'm walking past these places, and I kept trying to keep my brain from even thinking about it. Now I don't think about it at all because I don't have sugar cravings. My taste buds changed, and I know that they're made with milk and or eggs, and I don't want to be part of that cruelty to animals, so I won't touch them anymore. But so what could I have done? How could I have said, okay, if I started thinking, it'd be better to even give me a tool to not even think about it at all. Yeah. But once the thought came into saying, no, it's done, it's out of here, just get it out of my brain.
Yeah, perfect question, because it's so applicable to also what people are experiencing right now at this time of year when there's all these goodies emerging and sugar dripping from the ceiling and all of that. Through the mindfulness practice, as I learned it and as I teach in the Mindful Vegan, you begin by the first week. I have people just spend a few minutes each day doing the breathing, the breath. So you're learning to not just go with every thought. Even if you have to return your mind 20,000 times in 5 minutes, that doesn't matter. Just like Karen said, you can't do it wrong. You just keep doing that. The second week, and I'm leading to the answer to your question. The second week, we start to bring ourselves into the present by becoming aware of physical sensations. There's physical sensations going on our body at all times that we're also oblivious to because we've never been taught to look at them except when we burn our hand or when we're cold and want to cover up. There are sensations throughout your body just by virtue of being alive. And then the third week, we dive into the sensations of emotions. So every emotion that we have, that we experience, has a feeling to it. Think about the last time you were happy. Maybe it's now, maybe it's a few minutes ago, or last time you were angry, or last time you were sad. Those are all feelings. And the reason there's a reason we call them feelings, because you can feel them, right? If you think about anger, what does that feel like? It's like here and not in your stomach, or happiness is kind of an expansion. Craving also has a feeling to it. So this is how you navigate disquieting emotions through the mindfulness process. You've trained yourself better and better to be more present with what is happening. And that means also what is happening with your body. So as a mindfulness meditator, what I would do as I'm walking near, I'm getting that interest in the Starbucks sugar donut, and I would turn my attention to the feeling of what that feels like in my body instead of getting lost in the story, because the story is in the excessive rumination thing. I shouldn't have that. I don't want to have that. Last time I had this happen. If I have it, I'll feel bad. It's a debate that goes on in that wandering mind area that becomes excessive. And likewise, you wouldn't want to push it away, suppress it or ignore it, try to reason yourself out of it. Those actually never worked for me in the long run. What really worked was being present with the emotion. And guess what? All of our emotions, as long as we're not pushing them away, suppressing them, or running with the story, they only last a few seconds. It's when we get so wrapped up in them, which is really not being present with the feeling that's in your body, which is taking place right now. There's another part to that too, though, and this is a really important part of what I teach, is cravings are not only generated from like external cues, like, the sugar donut, or a memory of some sensory memory of a delight that you got before that maybe was helpful to you. but it's also based on deprivation, which means not being well fed enough from early in the day, whenever you get hungry, day after day after day. Many people say, oh, I eat plenty of food, but if you're not taking care of the needs when your body or the hunger arises in your body, it can create a kind of a stored hunger and drives up biochemistry that stimulates the thoughts of these things or makes you really interested to them in your environment. So this is a whole sidecar, but very important. And it was very important to my recovery. That's what I call it, recovery from this relationship with food eating in my body, because I finally abandoned dieting as I knew it after 30 years and took up the mindfulness practice. And that's what changed everything. So that's what you would have done to, using this process. That's a way to kind of have an intervention. But having the time of formal practice is really helpful so that you don't find yourself in the heat of the moment trying to apply this. It's like trying to get out on the court at Wimbledon without practicing your backhand. You probably should get some degree of mastery over what it feels like to create that little space, turn your attention to your body, and be right present with that.
Fantastic. That is really helpful. I appreciate that greatly. That's a good tool, and I can see where I'm sure that many people who are watching that would be really helpful to them, especially as we're approaching this time of year. As you say, sugar dripping from the ceiling, so many temptations, so many things that people are thinking about, so many opportunities to have those emotional, mine was definitely a lot of, my weight gain was a lot of emotional eating. And certainly during the holidays, you're interacting more with family, and who pushes our buttons more than family? And,
oh, yeah.
You got the Democrats and the Republicans coming to Thanksgiving dinner, and somebody gets mad. And so then you not only have the thought of that Starbucks donut, but you have the, oh, I'm all upset, so now I really have to have the Starbucks donut. So can we dive into that just a little bit further, take it away from the food itself and go back to the, Jane says I shouldn't have voted for John or Sue.
So and so.
Yeah.
And she really upset me at lunch today. And how stimulus response. So how do we deal with that? The upset of the friend, family member, whatever.
Yeah, and before I answer, I want to remind people coming in that Gina and Karen are doing a giveaway today. So if you've just joined us, click on share, and that enters you in the drawing for the giveaway when we get to the end.
Thank you.
So what we're talking about is navigating these disquieting states that arise at family celebrations, and this also naturally leads into what happens to be on the table. So, vegans go to the family meal, or vegetarians go to the family celebration, and there's already this idea of tension coming forward. So you brought up the politics, and boy, this is going to be a scary year for that one. This is the same process of bringing our attention to presence. It takes place here, just as we described with the donuts and the Starbucks sugar donuts. As we realize that if we're going to an event like this, and even before we go, we may start to have this idea of challenges ahead. Then we see these people, we hear what they say, and what happens? Reactivity, right? That's a really good example of reactivity. We just can sense, are getting our hackles up, especially if it's someone we've known for a long time, and we have the big story about them going back 30, 40 years of, oh, here they go again. What mindfulness practice does is it helps you create space. I can't think of a better way to describe it. Create space around that so that you recognize reactivity, and you also are able to bring yourself into being there in the present moment to have a conversation without getting lost in the story. So what does that mean? This means, and I tell a good story about this in the Mindful Vegan, about when I first had my training and I came back from a 10-day retreat, and I met with my parents, and this is a perfect example. And of course, we all have, maybe you guys don't, but we all have reactivity and relationship stuff going on with our parents going way back. But I remember we sat down at this table. They took me out to this cafe, picked me up at the airport, and I had this long-standing kind of thing with my father where we were always second-guessing each other, ready at the drop of a hat to kind of check each other, make a judgment about each other. And I decided that I was going to practice what I had been doing for the 10 days, which was to bring everything back into present instead of getting lost in what my dad was saying, what I really knew he meant, and my reactivity to that. And I navigated the sensations in my body. I could feel a little bit of tension. I could notice the reactivity, kind of like an object. You create a little bit of space around it. And I decided I'm just going to be present and listen to my father speak as if he's someone I haven't known before, and just really listen to him. And that we had the most spectacular time. And from that moment on, my relationship with my father shifted. It wasn't all healed and sunny and roses, and I never had this reactivity again, but it shifted because I was able to practice that. And this is the same thing you can do at the family table. Rather than getting into a position of defense or feeling like you have to win the argument, is there a way that you can simply be present with listening to people and connecting with them as a human being and giving them some kind of value for their way of thinking and way of being? That doesn't mean you have to agree with them, but people don't like being invalidated. None of us like to be shamed or blamed into another way of thinking. It doesn't work. And it's the same thing with our way of eating. Being present with people with where they are is the heart connection is the very best thing, and it's always been most effective at me for bringing people to a pleasant experience. And if people have a pleasant experience of you, this has a lot more to do with the facts, and it does not advance the ideology. It has to be a connection. Go ahead, Karen.
I was going to say earlier when we were talking about the wandering mind and then being present as a choice instead. One of the tools I have heard and applied from time to time is to, if I'm dealing with something and finding my mind is not, is going down a negative road that is not constructive, to bring myself back to gratitude and to find what I'm grateful for, because you can't actually be grateful and upset at the same time. And I found that to be very helpful. And I wanted to say, this is such great timing with Thanksgiving coming up to be able to listen anew with family members. But I wanted to also add that given that we are actually being thankful at Thanksgiving, perhaps to utilize keeping in that space of gratitude could be another example of what you're talking about.
Yeah, and actually I was trying to see what day it is in the Mindful Vegan. I do have where I introduce loving kindness meditation, which is in the same energy. With loving kindness meditation, it's that you are creating a wish. May all be healthy, happy, and safe. May all be grateful. May all be free of danger and suffering. And these kinds of things really open up your heart because it brings you back to that natural place of those qualities that we have endogenously. And I really want to point, that was the perfect segue there, because it's another way, and it brings your attention back into. I wanted to mention Dr. Dean Ornish, which I'm sure you're familiar with, who you are familiar with. Dr. Dean Ornish, he's out here in the UCSF Medical Center. And he has created the Dean Ornish program for reversal of heart disease. And his program is so successful that it actually qualifies for Medicare now. So it's been so proven through the time. But I interviewed him in preparation for the manuscript for the Mindful Vegan, because one thing I knew about Dean Ornish and his reversal of heart disease program was it wasn't just about the food. It was also about relationships. It was about meditation. It was about exercise and stress reduction. And he was so kind to me. He invited me into his office in Sausalito near San Francisco, and he just gave me all his books. And he had written one that I did not know about called Love and Survival. And it turns out Dr. Gina Ornish started meditating about the same time that I did. And that's why it's the foundation of his well-being and of his program. And he said to me, this is all on day 30. I put it on because it's a 30-day program. He said, I am so glad you're writing a book about meditation, and I am so glad that you are telling people that these qualities of love and compassion and kindness are within themselves. They're not something you have to reach out to get, like reaching out for happiness. It's like not like another form of Valium. So it was the perfect way to wrap the book up because it just brought all of those key points back together. And I like to bring that up, not only because I'm so grateful to Dr. Ornish for that, but to make the connection with the medical community. There is so much research now on mindfulness practice and relief from stress and anxiety, smoking cessation, cessation of binge eating, all across the board. And it's used now in hundreds of hospitals across our country with a mindfulness-based stress reduction program because it's in the books. The research is just so weighted toward increasing our well-being, enhancing our well-being through this simple mental training. And before we go, if we have time, or if we're going to be on a little bit together, I can teach a simple 4-step process. It only takes 5 or 6 seconds to do that can help bring people back to presence as we move into this busy time. So whenever that works in, that'd be fun to do.
I think that would be a fantastic way for us to wrap up. Yes, please.
Oh, you want to do that now then?
Yes.
Okay. And I have this actually, it's in, just for those people who already have a book, I have this broken down very carefully, and it's called the STOP strategy, and it's on day 9 of the Mindful Vegan. So everything we've talked about today is here in the book and in more depth. There's a strategy in mindfulness practice known as STOP that is a simple tool for bringing you back to presence and out of wandering mind in just a few seconds. If we keep in mind that this tendency for wandering mind, which by the way, I do want to point out that wandering mind is an important evolutionary tool for us, because going through time, we needed to be able to be alert to the danger around us and kind of, not just focus in on here, but to open up. The problem is that we have become especially with all the distractions around us, social media, it's so easy to just get pulled out. But it's not a bad thing on its own. But wouldn't it be nice if we could have some choice about when we are pulled into it and when we're not? So STOP is a way throughout the day to practice bringing your attention back into the present from wandering mind. So STOP is simply this. S stands for stop. So wherever you are, whatever's going on, you simply bring yourself into presence. Stop what you're thinking about. Just becoming aware of, I'm doing stop right now, brings you in. Then T is for take a breath. Take a breath or two, because as we said earlier, breathing takes place in the present moment. So the minute you stop and turn your attention to the feeling of the breath, you don't have to count it or do anything with it. Just, oh, I'm breathing. You are bringing yourself into the present moment. Then O stands for observe. Observe what's going on in your body, in your mind. Are you tense? Are you happy? Are you relaxed? Connect with the presence of what's happening in your body right now, which, as we were talking about earlier, also connects you very much with what your emotional state is and even what your mental state is. And then P stands for proceed. Proceed with your day with some degree of mindfulness as you have just brought to yourself as you go through the rest of your activities. So the value of stop is you switch tracks out of wandering mind, out of busyness, out of craziness to being right here, right now. So what I recommend is that people connect this with tasks that they're doing during the day. Can you make it a habit that every time you're brushing your teeth, you implement stop? Every time you stop at a stoplight, every time the phone rings, when you're in line at the supermarket, if you want to set a timer on your phone or your computer, just to remind you to come back into presence, this will actually have a very opening and relaxing effect on you through the day, because you have purposely chosen to not be lost in wandering mind, not get lost in the frantic activity of the day, and just be right here, right now, just for a few seconds.
Totally
that
fantastic.
Is beautiful, really, really powerful. Well, before we wrap up, Karen, do you have any closing thoughts on what Lani has taught us?
Oh, it's just so powerful to really hear more and discuss mindfulness and food and their relationship, and actually dealing with them together instead of separately and together. But Lani, can you share with us where people can find you?
Yes. My website, of course, is lanimuelrath.com. So I will probably put that in the notes. And if you can't, you can also go to the mindfulveganbook.com. It takes you to the same place, and there's more information there. Yeah. I wanted to make a point that with the Mindful Vegan book, I really wanted this put together so that people would start the practices. And that's why I made it a 30-day plan. I didn't want it to be just, oh, this is a great idea, maybe I'll do this someday. I wanted to start, one day is 1 minute, day 2 is 2 minutes. And I also created some audios that you can find in the book where to get them. You can come back to my website, download them for free, one to go with each day of the 30 days if you like Wonderful. That kind of support. Yeah.
Wonderful.
It's a terrific resource. I love it. It's a beautiful book. You guys, this make a fantastic gift, a gift that you would be very proud to give for Christmas or for birthdays or for anything, and give it to yourself. Who do you need to take care of more than yourself? I know most of you probably need to be taking much better care of yourself. So
I know we all do.
Absolutely. So
that issue of self-care is, I'm glad you brought that in just as we're wrapping up here, because we hear that and we know we're supposed to be connected with it, but it's so hard for people to understand or actually do. But in the context of our conversation, if we realize that if we can use this strategy as a way to care for ourselves, meaning disconnecting ourselves from being lost and wild and anxious, then how does that translate in our relationships with everything about us, around us, our world, the people that we connect with? So if we look at it that way, it's going to improve everything that we're engaged with every day.
Well said, awesome. And what a great way to wrap this up. You guys, we are giving away a copy of her fantastic book. If you share it right now as we're wrapping up, share
not too late. It's not too late.
Not too late. Yes, exactly. And separately, I provided the link to the book directly. You're welcome to buy it. That would be great. And you can go to the mindfulveganbook.com. You can go to LaniMuelrath.com. I shared all of those links in the comments below in Facebook. So with that, there's plenty of ways to find her. And we'll be back again with another episode of the Healthy Happy Hour soon. And with that, we encourage you to be healthy and